Ladies and gentlemen, please kindly come back to your seats. All right. There's so much excitement in this room. Okay. I would like to start out without a further ado. Please join me in welcoming our first speaker for the day. All right. Our first speaker for the day, Ms. Baiba, who has Baiba has been an AMI trainer and director of the elementary training in Bergamo. She has been involved in the AMI elementary training since 1975, becoming an elementary trainer in 1986 and a director of training in 1992. Baiba has lectured internationally and conducted the first elementary training course in Japan. Serving on the AMI Pedagogical Committee from 2004 to 2013, her contribution reflects a long-standing dedication to Montessori education. Today, she will be addressing and talking about nature and harmony, the foundations of Montessori education. Please join me in welcoming once again Baiba with a loud round of applause.
Put it down to 5. Right, so I'll start. Okay, thank you very much. Well, first of all, is it clear? All right. I'd like to thank everybody. I can't thank you by name because I'm a bit ignorant on all the names. But I thank you. I'm very honoured to be here. So thank you all very much. Everybody involved for inviting me and for having me here in, as was said, this rather special setting. I've never given a talk in a setting like this. So, and also it's lovely to be in India, I have to say. It's my third time in India, so, but given the topic that we have, fits beautifully. Okay, so, I need a table. I'll have to sit, also because of my age, and it's comfortable to sit because it's quite a long time, 2 hours altogether. So, so that's why I asked for a table and all the rest of it. And yes, I think that's it. I hope you're seeing something on the screen that sort of sets it up. Nature and Harmony is the talk that I'm giving. Nature and Harmony, the Foundation of Montessori Education. But I also really like the general theme of the Congress, which is observing harmony and nurturing potential, right? And I must admit, when I first heard that, I thought, well, nature, so what do we mean by nature? There's so many ways of thinking about nature. There's nature, there's the world, and everything that the world contains. But of course, also from our point of view, there's what is the nature of the child, what is the nature of the adolescent, and what is natural development, okay? And in fact, what do we mean by education? What is Montessori education, or the Montessori approach to education, or the Montessori method, as some people call it? So, since in the end we have to focus on Montessori education, or the Montessori approach to education, I think there are three aspects that I would ask you to keep in mind as I talk. So if it seems that I'm not being a bit spontaneous and not always saying things in a highly organized way, you can always organize things in your mind if you keep in mind these three aspects. The first one is natural development, okay? So development, but what do we mean by development? We mean the natural development of the human being, right? The human individual. The second aspect, is the actual Montessori approach to education, right? What is it that's special and different about the Montessori approach that distinguishes itself from other approaches, which could be the traditional approach to education, it could be the Steiner approach to education. There are so many different alternative forms of education as well. And the third aspect, which I believe is also very important and illuminating, and which perhaps not all of us consider so much. Is it okay? Is it fine? You need another one? No. All right. Is to think about this. Montessori's thinking, Dr. Montessori's thinking, evolved. It wasn't always the same. It evolved for the 45 years of her life that she dedicated solely to children. 45 years is a long time for someone who's dedicating themselves and has talent in that sense too. So it means a lot of experimentation went on, a lot of observation went on. So it really, really is important to consider the evolution of her approach to education. Because there was definite evolution over those 45 years, from 1907, January the 6th, so we're right in the same month, January the 6th, which was of course Epiphany, or the day of the Three Kings. Is it okay? Is there a problem? No. Okay. Anyway, so 45 years go from January the 6th, that's what I'm taking, January the 6th, 1907, when we have the official inauguration of the very first Children's House, or Casa dei Bambini, as we would say in Italian, up to when she gives her, as far as we know, first advanced, so-called advanced course dedicated solely to children of 6 to 12 years, and that was in Kodai Canal, here in India, 1943-44. Right? But if we go back to so that's many years in which this approach can evolve, based on experimentation, observation, reflection, etc., etc. And as regards that first Children's House, I want to make this comment. It is not that the Montessori approach or the Montessori method gave birth to that first Children's House. It's much better to think of it the other way around. It was the first Children's House that gave birth to what was to become the Montessori approach, or the Montessori approach to education, or the Montessori method. This is something that actually was stated by an Italian statesman who was a friend of the Montessoris. His name was Salvatore Valitucci, and he was an Italian Minister of Education. And there's something really good to bear in mind, because when you understand that it was the work of those first children, the first children, she had worked with children before that already, we know that. But it was the first children that were, if you like, typical children. typical from a certain point of view, not from other points of view. Okay, anyway. Over all those years of her work, right, solely dedicated to children, because prior to that, she had maintained her work as a doctor, she had maintained her work lecturing to adults in the university and other institutions of higher education, right? But it's over all those years that the Montessori method or approach kept evolving, all right? And so my advice always is that I think when you think about it that way and you try to understand, then it deepens our own personal understanding and knowledge. But to help us, we need to actually order her work chronologically. Take everything that you can of the work by Montessori, the books that she wrote, books that were really a consequence of people taking notes of her lectures, articles, whatever. You have to organize them in your mind chronologically to just understand well and appreciate how much this approach changed. It never changed in the sense of transforming itself into the opposite or anything. But it was what Montessori herself describes. It's as though this kind of path was traced in 1907, but it wasn't fully developed, okay? So there's a constant development and enrichment, really, over time. Anyway, it's by the end of her life, it's really by the end of her life, and I assume you know when she died, which was 1952. It's only really by the end of her life that she could represent her understanding of natural development like this, what you're seeing up on the screen. So this is a chart. This is for a chart that she made for a course that she gave in Italy, in Perugia, in 1950. So she dies in 52. She actually does this drawing in 1950. The chart that you're seeing on the screen is actually a drawing made by Camillo Grazzini based on Montessori's original drawing. But the drawings that she made are very sketch-like, okay? We have two ways of representing the four phases of development. And both of them are much more sketch-like than the ones that you see around. The ones that you see around are either like this, which means Camillo's drawings, or other versions that you sometimes find too, because many, I don't know, new versions keep coming along, I think. All right. So if you, from that chart, which I assume is familiar to most of you, if not all of you, she's actually considering the whole of development. So we're very far from that, in that 1907 official inauguration of the first children's house, which was for children, preschool children, right? And it takes her the rest of her life to really reach that kind of understanding that's represented here. The whole of development. I don't know, sometimes you should think to yourselves, what could I say instead of development? What do I actually mean when I say development? So it's sometimes nice to find other ways of thinking about it. So I'm going to say Mario Montessori also describes development as the process of becoming. I think it's very beautiful, the process of becoming, right? We know that this process of becoming takes the human individual from birth right through to maturity. And the age that's given on this chart, and also the other chart we have, is 24. So from birth to 24, which is extraordinary if you think about it. If it really, I mean, in one sense we can say it takes until the age of 18, and then from another point of view we can say that it takes until the age of 24. Either way, that is a long time. And what is the goal of development? If it's the process of becoming, then clearly the goal of development is to become we could say a fully formed individual. But what do we mean by a fully formed individual? We have to think of the adult, right? all of childhood and adolescence is a process that's leading that individual to becoming an adult. And that means to have the capacity to lead an autonomous life. We used to say independence, so we associate natural development with the development of independence. And that's good, okay? And of course then you can think about independence in different points of view. But I like to think now autonomous, because sometimes even thinking independence, we live in an interdependent society. Nobody's really independent, but it means independent in the sense of being able to function fully as a member of any society, any human group, in an autonomous fashion, which also means being able to have children, in the sense of being able to raise children, a new generation. Okay, so if you see an arrow there, an arrow which is heading toward a goal, right, that goal is indeed maturity, which means the mature adult. And then, because you know, you get university professors, one university professor I remember said, oh, the development goes on all of its life. Well, yes, it does, but it's a bit different. You know, the kind of development that's going on in these years, and the years indicated in this chart, is the kind of development we have later on is more like tweaking, really. Unless you have a conversion of some kind. You know, sometimes people go through conversion, completely transform their lives. That's possible too, but for most of us, it's more on the level of tweaking. Anyway, this kind of development that we see in colour is development that's driven by nature. Okay? It's driven by nature, by the irrepressible forces of nature, and it's not driven by the actions of adults. It's not driven by human legislation, right? And anyway, the forces of nature are much greater than those of individual human beings. So if we're really interested in health and harmony, right, then we have to collaborate with nature. If we wish to see healthy, harmonious human development, we have to have some understanding of natural development, and we have to work with nature and not against nature. When we work against nature, what are we favouring instead? Pathology, deviated development. We can call it by many names.